Welcome to Superhero Bibliophiles Podcast. This is the companion show to the Superhero Cinephiles Podcast, where we discuss comic books and graphic novels. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and today I am joined by a returning guest, and that is Logan Crowley. Logan, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Been a minute, Perry. Good to see you again.
Literally, just a few minutes. We just finished our discussion about Ultimate Avengers on the main show, and now we're about to talk about Legends of the Dark Knight, graphic novel by Matt Wagner. So this is a collection of stories that we're going to be talking about here. But before we dive into that, why don't you remind people about who you are and what you do?
Okay, so I am my name is Logan Crowley. I am the co-host of the Single Bound podcast, where my wife and I review single issues of comic books that stand on their own. It's essentially a read-along podcast, but because each one is just a single issue, your barrier for entry is very low, about 24 pages, and you're on the same playing field with us. Uh, we are currently on hiatus, as I mentioned in my last episode appearance, because my wife is having a baby and she is the one who likes to edit podcasts. So we're taking just a minute for her to get through her morning sickness part of this whole ordeal. But once that's wrapped up, we will be back and making more episodes.
Okay, great. Now, what kind of stuff is grabbing your attention lately? I know we talked on the previous show, but do you have anything else that you wanted to spotlight this time around?
I came prepared. I had two different spotlights for the two different episodes. So
Good man.
the other one that I am super into right now is a couple of video games, which I am not a huge gamer. I've always played video games, but I've never been the kind of nerd that lives for video games. So that's kind of out of the ordinary for me. Chief amongst them is a game called Dispatch. Have you played it yet?
No, but I think you mentioned this before. Is this the superhero game?
Yes. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Do not play it with your kids up. It looks like it's kid friendly. It's not. And they do have a censor function, but their version of a censor is to put a giant black bar over the screen that covers up whatever the offending object is and whatever else happens to be near it in frame. And then they never circle back and explain to you what that is. So definitely it's a not with your kids around game, but is a lot of fun. It is pretty much a choose your own adventure superhero show. You're not even like, this is not even a game. There's no walking animation, right? The characters just walk, on like a TV show. And then when they talk, you make the decisions. Very well written, very well voice acted. So that's video game number one that's got my attention right now. Video game number two that's got my attention right now is Cosmic Invasion, which is a throwback to the old Marvel beat 'em ups, like
Oh,
Captain America and the
yes.
Avengers.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is the new Marvel side scroller game, right?
right. That game is
I didn't know that was
electronic.
out yet.
It is, and it is wonderful in a very nostalgic way. I don't know that a kid from today who played this game would get much out of it, but I really like it. And then the third video game thing that has been eating me up is since the Street Fighter trailer came out, I have been obsessed with Street Fighter 2. I got a collection that has every one of the Street Fighter games from when I was a kid, and I've just been getting the crap kicked out of me on an evening basis. So
Yeah, I haven't played Dispatch yet. That is on my list. I did not know that the Marvel game was out yet because I remember seeing the trailer for that, or even just the announcement, just being so excited about it because those are the same guys I believe that did the recent Turtles game, Shredder's Revenge, aren't
yes,
they?
yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
And there's
And it
also
plays just
a
like that.
Yeah, and there's also a Power Rangers game as well. I'm not sure if it's the same guys, but it's very similar in style, like Rita's Rewind, I think it's called.
It is,
Um,
I believe it is the same team.
it's the same team, yeah. So I love Shredder's Revenge. I haven't played the Power Rangers one yet, but that one was also on my list. I've just been watching to see when the price comes down.
Yeah.
But now that knowing that the Marvel one's out now, I may just have to buy that regardless of what the price is because we're coming up on the end of the semester here, so I'm going to have about like 2 months of free time. So where my kids are
Well,
going to be at preschool, so I won't have to worry about being distracted.
it and Dispatch actually are both only $30. to play both games.
But that's
So
on that's on PC, right?
I played on PlayStation,
Oh, okay. All right.
both of them.
Okay. Okay. It's 30. All right. I should definitely check that out yet. All right. Good to know about that. Thank you for that. Letting me know about that. I'm gonna have to look that up once we're done here. As for me, I also came prepared with something else. So I mentioned before that I was diving into some other different comic stuff, and one of the stuff that I was reading was the current Age of Revelation stuff, the most recent X-Men crossover. But in addition to that, on the recommendation from I think it was Mike Sanguilorio recommended this to me, and there was the Green Lantern Earth One series from several years back, maybe like 10 years now. DC did this Earth One series of trade paperbacks where it was kind of like the ultimate approach that Marvel did, where they're kind of like
Mhm.
restarting the characters and in these different in their own in a new universe. So they had Jeff Johns did Batman Earth One, um, J. Michael Straczynski did Superman, Grant Morrison did Wonder Woman, and then there was also Green Lantern and Teen Titans. And so I've read the Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman ones, and I've been curious about the others, but I've heard bad things about Teen Titans, so I never even checked that one out at all yet. But Green Lantern, it was one that looked kind of interesting, but I never did nothing about it really grab me. But I'm pretty sure I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Mike who recommended it to me. And upon that recommendation, I did check it out and I really dug it. I thought it was a really cool take on the Green Lantern mythos. I'm not a huge Green Lantern fan, so I don't have any real attachment to the concept, but I thought what they did with it was a very cool sci-fi story.
Yeah, it. I am a really big Green Lantern fan. Uh, I thought it was all right. I thought it was interesting. Um, I will admit I liked it pretty well, but I think I will like it less if it has as much to do with the Lantern show's adaptation as the concept art they used suggested that it did. Because I definitely want a Green Lantern show, like the standard. So if that comic is what they use as their source material, it probably will fall some for me. But I did enjoy it. I liked it a whole lot more than Batman Earth One. Didn't like it as much as Superman Earth One, but I thought Superman Earth One was pretty good. The first two, anyway. Third one's a little
Yeah,
wonky.
was there a third Superman Earth one? I don't think I've read the third one
Yeah,
then. Oh wow, I have to check.
yeah.
I have to look into that.
It's the clown face ICP guy, who's not a great villain, but it is a good comic. And then Parasite, and then Zod. So
Oh, okay, I'll have to. I don't know if I've actually seen the third one. Then I'll have to look into that. But yeah, the Batman ones, I expected to like those a lot more, and I was really kind of disappointed when they really kind of fell flat for me. Wonder Woman as well. Like I'm a huge Morrison fan, but it's just I felt like that one didn't really do it for me, and I think like it was the time it came out and the time I read it in very different contexts. So I felt like the depictions of the female characters and the whole like submission angle type things didn't read as well in a post Me Too world.
yeah, I own that comic and have not been able to bring myself to read it just because of. It's funny what you just said about Teen Titans is my exact same. And I I remember reading the Teen Titans one and being like, this is all right, but I couldn't tell you anything about it right now. I started to say this when you said you hadn't read Teen Titans. I could not tell you a single thing about that Teen Titans comic except that I do kind of like the cyborg design. They gave Cyborg like a flat head that it kind of invokes like a 90s sort of hip hop flat top. It kind of invokes Frankenstein. I just thought that was a clever design and a clever way to do his look in a way that really blended the two sides of that character that come together. Um, but Wonder Woman, I have not had the guts to try and read that comic just because of how bad the word of mouth on it has been over the years. And I also
Uh,
like Grant Morrison, so I don't want to be mad at him.
yeah, I mean, it's not bad, but just like I expect so much better from Morrison, so it didn't really do a whole lot for me. Um, and maybe I need to give it another read. Maybe I know there's also a second one of that, but I haven't read the second one yet. So I don't know. Maybe I'll feel better about it if I try it again. But the first time I read through it didn't really do much for me. But I will say too, the other thing I dipped back into was the Mike Grell Green Arrow stuff. And I had read some of that a few years back, and I was just kind of like reading through it pretty quickly. But I had the urge to kind of do it again because I'm working on some stuff with a public domain character called the Arrow, which is actually the first archer in comics. So I've been like revisiting some other archery type stuff. So I'm revisiting the first season of Arrow, and I decided to revisit the Mike Grell Green Arrow. And so I started off with the Longbow Hunters, and then in the second volume of the trade collection, but the first volume of the new ongoing. And yeah, it's much better than I remember. Like first time I read
Oh
it through,
yeah,
I maybe I wasn't in the right headspace. Maybe I was just kind of like reading too fast. But this second time I spent a little bit more time with it and was really digging it a lot more.
that's funny. I had that same the when I read Longbow Hunters as a kid. I was not a fan, and I also reread it probably 8 months ago now and enjoyed it more as an adult. When I was a kid, I resented like the idea that he didn't need the trick arrows anymore and he wasn't going to hang out with Green Lantern and stuff like that. And I do still feel that way a little. It's kind of the same thing with the Ultimates you were talking about in the last one. There is an impulse that when I was a kid after 9/11 was very prevalent to try to ground everything. And I think in some aspects, some very specific aspects, that works. And in other ones, it ends up diminishing very imaginative ideas. And that's the way that I used to feel about Longbow Hunters. But reading it again as a grown up, I really enjoyed it quite a bit more. I got so much more out of the art as an adult than I did as a kid. Like I think that's the best. Oh, that's tough. I almost said that's the best Green Arrow costume, but man, I love that Neil Adams costume. But those almost feel like two totally different characters, you know. But that Longbow Hunter's costume is stellar. That art is fantastic, and that was one of the few times that DC has really made you feel like its characters were really in danger. Like that comic
Mm-hmm.
has a real noir under vibe to it that is a lot of fun and really really cool.
Yeah, I think one of the things that stuck out to me the first time I read it is I felt like they had toned down Ollie's politics a little bit to a point which I didn't like
Mm-hmm.
that. And I felt like, but rereading it again,
No,
I'm like, oh
I
no,
don't
there's
like
still
it.
a lot of that stuff in there. It's just it's just a little bit more subtle. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
and it's funny because looking at how Green Arrow the comics went in the opposite direction that Arrow the TV show went in, because Arrow the
mm-hmm.
TV show started off with that very kind of like grounded, gritty feel, and no trick arrows and all that, and not even a mask, just like the grease paint, and then later
Yeah.
on they end up. And my whole theory, my whole thesis for that, which I don't know if there's any proof to this, but just based on the timing and everything, is I think they went into that show thinking like, oh, everybody likes the Dark Knight style of superhero stuff. So we have to make it like the Dark Knight. We have to make it very grounded. And then the summer after the first season, Avengers comes out and they're like, oh, everybody likes the superhero stuff. We should do more of the superhero stuff.
You're 100% right about that. I would bet the farm that that is exactly how that went. And
Uh,
ultimately, I think is the problem with a lot of those CW shows is they're kind of ideologically rudderless. Whatever's popular right now, we're just going to do that throughout the whole series. When Star
yeah,
Wars comes back, they have a lightsaber fight in one of the seasons of The Flash. Like,
yeah, especially when they got onto the later season. But anyway, we're not here to talk about the Arrowverse stuff. Instead, as we mentioned before, we're here to talk about Matt Wagner, Legend of the Dark Knight. So this is a collection of uh different Batman stories that Wagner has done over the years. So I'm gonna run down the list of stuff that's in this collection. So it's Batman Legends of the Dark Knight numbers 28 to 30. This is the Faces storyline, which Wagner was the writer and artist on. Um, Batman Riddler, The Riddle Factory, um, which he did with Dave Taylor. Batman Black and White #3, he did all his own, the story Heist. Batman The Monster Men, which was a limited series he did. Um, six part limited series. He did the writing and the art on that. Batman the Mad Monk, another one that he did the writing and art on, and 6-issue series there, and also Batman #54, which was, I believe, a backup story for the regular Batman series at the time. So this is actually the only one of these that he didn't write himself. This was actually written by Tom King. So like I had never read any of these stories beforehand, except possibly the Tom King one. I think maybe I had read that story. But the rest of these, I don't. This was my first time reading it. But what is your history with Matt Wagner and these Batman tales?
So the only one that I had read, I read this before we planned to do an episode on it. When we were talking about possible episodes to do, you asked me about comics that I had read recently and that were good, and this was one of the ones I read, 2 months ago or so, and then so we decided to do an episode on it. Prior to reading this, I had read Faces some years ago, and that is one of my favorite Batman comics. And and then not that long ago, I read Trinity about Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. And I loved both of those. And that's what led me to this comic of like, man, I really love Matt Wagner's Batman art. I want to read more of it and just get that particular version. And so it led me to this. And this is a mixed bag, but I think it's a good mixed bag. You know, Santa's sack is also by definition a mixed bag. So mixed bag, not always bad, but there are parts of this that I don't like. And I think we'll get into some of the tropes that Matt Wagner uses in his writing that, as I have read more of his stuff, have worn on me. And I left out Sandman Mystery Theater, which someone is screaming at their cell phone somewhere.
I think probably one of regular guest Stacey Dukes is probably that voice you're hearing.
Yeah. I also really like Sandman Mystery Theater and read it during the same Matt Wagner rampage I had about 2 months ago. Faces, I think, is my favorite of the stories in here, but I found something to like in all of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure what my favorite is. I really liked Faces. Like and they were smart to put Faces first in this collection. I'm not sure if they had organized this chronologically.
It's chronological.
It is chronological. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was wondering if they had done it chronologically. So, but even if they didn't, like if they were just trying to organize it by what was like because typically a lot of anthologies, I've seen this with anthologies I've worked on, is they'll open and end the book with like the two strongest pieces that they have. Mm-hmm. So it's like you have a really solid opening to get people to start reading. You'll have a really solid story to close it all off on, to give people with a positive impression of it, which hopefully they'll then go on to give a good review of the whole thing. And if that was the intent here, like Faces, I mean, obviously it wasn't, so it was arranged chronologically, but that would have been Faces would have been the perfect story to open this up with, because it does hit the ground running, and it is a very interesting story here. The other ones here, the Riddle Factory was a fun one. I thought that was a nice little thing. It was a nice little Riddler piece. Heist 2, that was a nice, quick little, bite-sized piece here that we get in there. Batman and the Monster Men, I think, would probably be my runner-up. Like Faces, I think would probably be my favorite, and I think Batman the Monster Men would be the second run. And then the Mad Monk was okay, but I don't think it had the same punch as the Monster Men did. So how about you? What were some of the other things you thought about this? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to mention, do you know what he's doing with Monster Men and the Mad Monk?
He's retelling those early appearance stories.
Right. And that's what I was going to mention there, just, well, and if in case any readers didn't know, or listeners, anybody, in case anyone's reading the transcript off their phone like a lunatic in silence. But this was supposed to be a trilogy of these Golden Age retellings. And that is you talked about, typically you want to start strong and end strong. That is the problem with this collection, is that Monster Men and Mad Monk were supposed to be a trilogy with a third piece that never came, for whatever reason. So the story does. If you read this, Mad Monk does leave some threads hanging in the air that don't get resolved. Uh, but the Riddler one was the one that I felt like was the most timely, like currently prescient. Because I feel
Mm.
like if you gave this to somebody and filed all the dates off, they would go, "Oh, this is Batman versus Mr. Beast. This is a direct reference to Mr. Beast and Batman beating up Mr. Beast," and it predates that by God 20 years. You know, uh, I thought that was very interesting. How many parallels there are between that current thing happening in our culture and this. Um, and I felt like the Tom King book was it was interesting and it was nice. It was good Tom King. There are two Tom Kings inside all of us. One of them is Vision Tom King. One of them is Heroes in Crisis Tom King, and you get the one you feed. And this was Vision Tom King, and it wasn't a lot, but it was pretty good.
Yeah, I feel like Tom King is. I think he does well in two ways. One is if you're giving him like an Elseworlds type thing where he can just go nuts with stuff. I know again, Stacey Dukes is probably, shaking his fist at me, but I really dug Strange Adventures, but I also have no previous association with Adam Strange. So I definitely have that going for me with that. But
Yeah, I'm with Stacey Dukes
yeah,
on that one. That's one of them.
I know I have definitely been in those places where I've seen, characters I love definitely, written completely bizarrely. So I feel for you, but me not having any association with Adam Strange, I thought it was really creative. Um Vision too, I loved Vision. And when he did like the Batman stuff, I felt like one of the things about his Batman work is that some of it is really good, and I feel like especially when he does kind of like these more character focused things, it
Mm-hmm.
really works a lot better. Like I one of my favorite issues is the double date one with Batman,
Yes.
Superman, Lois Lane, and Catwoman. I thought that was an excellent use of those characters. Um, I almost hesitated to rank it within this one because that's the only one because we're focusing on Wagner, and Wagner just did the art on that. He didn't do any of the writing, but it was
Yeah.
still, that being said, it was still very well written, and I thought
Yes.
I like the way that they switch back and forth, and the transitions here are amazingly well done, like
Yeah.
transitioning between both the past and the present with those.
Well, the biggest thing that brought me to this, and it's very apparent in that one, but it's apparent through all of it. I really think Matt Wagner might be the most underrated Batman artist. It's got a little bit of like Batman the Animated Series mixed with Batman Year One. So you get this kind of big heroic Batman, but in this sort of gritty noir atmosphere that I think it really works. The action in this is incredible. It's very kinetic. When he bleeds, you feel it. There's some moments, especially in the torture gauntlet in the Mad Monk stuff, where he gets injuries, and I go, "Oh God, how are you? How are you going to live through that?" And
Mhm.
then he does because he's Batman. That's the
Yeah, with Wagner's art, I think some of the faces don't do it for me a lot, but when he gets down to like the Batman stuff, I agree with you. I think his Batman is perfect. And it is this nice blend of the animated series with the classic aesthetic, even with a little bit of like the Frank Miller aesthetic. Somehow it takes all these different versions and kind of makes them work together as one.
Oh yeah. Well, and particularly with Faces, the first story. I think we could say if you only read one story that's in this trade, Faces is the one.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite Two Face stories, and I think that really shows Wagner's strengths as a writer as well as his strengths as an artist. But that is also in some ways the weakest art at times because I feel like his art is much more consistent when you get to Monster Men and Mad Monk, whereas in Faces, particularly with the freak show characters that Two Face has kidnapped, some of their deformities and maladies are rendered very inconsistently. And I think that it's supposed to create, I think it's on purpose to create this kind of fever dream unreality, as some of them are drugged, and it's a very bizarre freak show story, but I don't know that it always works as
In,
well as it does in the other stories in this.
yes, I agree. Although when I was saying faces didn't do it for me, I wasn't talking about the artwork in that story. I was saying like the way he draws faces in
Oh,
general.
oh, yes. Okay. I understand now. Sorry.
But
Who's
no,
on first?
but you are right with that though. I think you're right. It definitely feels rougher, and this was an earlier story, so that makes sense. Although I do like the way he draws Two-Face. I think
Yes.
because one of the things that always annoys me about Two-Face is when they draw him with a full head of hair and the acid has only changed the color of the left side. I think that is just it's one of those, and I know it's
I
a
love
silly
it.
thing because we have I understand that we're in a fantasy world here and everything, but the fact that this guy got his acid splashed on his face and it mangled his skin, but it just changed the color of his hair, it drives me nuts. It's just one of those things that just always pulls me out of the story whenever I see it. And while he
That's
does have
interesting.
hair, it's just I don't know why, but it's just always. So when I first read Long Halloween and we get to Tim Sale's depiction, I'm like, that makes sense. That makes so
Yeah.
much sense. And
But
ever
that's
since
an
seeing
interesting
Tim Sale
question.
do that, it just ever and it's only since Tim Sale. Tim Sale screwed it up for
Yeah.
me. Ever since then, it drives me crazy.
That's interesting. You don't feel. I've never thought before that the acid changed his hair color until you mentioned that. I've always felt like the guy who is sewing two different tweed suits together is probably dyeing his hair.
I never thought that it was he dyed his hair. I mean, that does make a lot more sense. And I think it's because again, I think it's Batman the Animated Series ruined it for me in that aspect because in
Oh
that
yeah,
he
he
gets
does on that one.
he it's like that chemical explosion. So I just always assumed that it was the acid that had changed his hair as well. I never thought that it was like a hair dye. Um but anyway, but one of the things that Wagner does here is he kind of finds a middle ground between those two. Like it's the he does have a little bit of hair there, but it's not as it looks like it's like almost singed, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it kind of works for that. So it's like a nice middle ground between the sale version and the usual depiction of the character.
Well, and with what he does so much good work with shadows, particularly in faces, and you can almost make the argument it's like is it even really different, or am I just perceiving it different because I can't see it right? And that one things are always scarier in the dark, right? Because they're a little bit obscured, and that kind of obscured can't really make out the details of what Two Face looks like. I think works so well in this to make him. I think this is one of the creepiest looking Two Faces that gets under your skin,
Mm-hmm.
of the anybody who's drawn him. What I love this story for, though, is what this does for the character Harvey Dent, because so much of every Two Face story usually boils down to I physically can't be a productive, healthy member of society because of this horrible physical thing that has happened to me. It just can't be expected of me. And this is a fantastic story because he kidnaps all these freak show people to give them a happy place to live where they don't have to suffer from the burdens of what they look like the way that he does, only for them at the end to go, no, man, we're prisoners. We don't want to live here. We had good lives. We're making good money at the circus. This really doesn't have anything to do with what you look like. This is your problem on the inside that is making you like this. And I just thought that was brilliant. Particularly that there's a two-faced Carney at the end that gives that message to him. So it's Two-Face talking to a guy. I think he has elephantitis on one side of his face or something, or a tumor or something like that. But the fact that it is a two-faced man and a two-faced man having that conversation, I thought was brilliant.
Yes, I agree too. I thought that was a brilliant way to twist the ending in there. And also too, this is one of those stories about Two-Face that I think what makes it interesting as well is so often I think Two-Face kind of comes off as a ironically enough a one-note character. where
Mhm.
it's always just the whole gimmick of duality thing. And
Right.
after a while, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, we get it, right? You're gonna rob the second bank of Gotham, or you're rob two banks
Yeah.
at one. Yeah, we get it, right? But here, that's not what it is. It's more focused on the outcast aspect. So they're trying to find a different way of getting into and show us that broken psychology, but showing it in a different way. So I thought that was very clever.
Yeah. It's funny with that, with the twos thing. The one where that always gets me is, I grew up in the South. So like I grew up around guns. I have a lot of knowledge of them, right? The one that always gets me is whenever they do that twos thing, they always are like, this was Two-Face because he shot a 22, and then you see the pistol that he's carrying, and it looks like Dirty Harry's gun, whereas a 22 is a bullet, smaller than than the tip of your pinky. It's about as big around as the head of a pin. But the artist never knows, so he just goes, it's a 22, and it's the size of his leg.
Mhm.
We'll be right back after this.
We all love superhero movies and TV shows, but what about the comics that inspired them? Marvel, DC, Image, and more have provided the template for the movies and shows we all enjoy watching, and it's important to honor that tradition by buying and reading comic books. Superhero Cinephiles is proud to be an affiliate of mycomicshop.com. It began as a small mail-order business operated by junior high school student Buddy Saunders all the way back in 1960, and has been operating on the internet since 1997. My Comic Shop has new releases, value packs, back issues, trade paperbacks, comic art, regular auctions, and a whole lot more, including 35% discounts on pre-orders. You can also sell your own comics or utilize their consignment services. You can even create your own want list of comics you're searching for. To get started, check out our affiliate link in the show notes or on the superherocinephiles.com homepage.
And we're back. So let's dive into Batman and the Monster Men, because I think this was, like we said, this is probably the second best of the stories here in this collection. But before we dive too much into this one specifically, you had mentioned that this was originally supposed to be a trilogy. So do you know whatever happened to that third part of the trilogy? Do you know why it never came out or what it was supposed to be based on?
I don't know what happened. And I don't know what it was supposed to be. And I've tried to track that down, but other than just that it was going to be another Golden Age adaptation, I have not been able to figure out what the third part was supposed to be. But he had said, I believe where he said that it was supposed to be a trilogy was on the Word Balloon podcast with John
Okay.
Centris. So if you track down his most recent appearance on that was where I got that information. But he didn't give anything else. There's lots of things I would have loved. There is a sprinkling of Red Hood Easter eggs throughout both of these. So I seriously wonder if it wasn't going to be an adaptation of Batman #1, just the first Joker story.
Mhm.
And that would have been really interesting. That comic famously ends with Batman stabbing the Joker through the chest with a rapier and throwing him off a balcony. So I think it would have been a very different if it was faithful, which these are not super faithful. It's kind of like somebody told Matt Wagner what happened to those comics in a loud bar, and then he sort of put it down as best as he could. But I think that they're better for that. It modernizes them.
Well, I mean, because if I'm not mistaken, those original stories, and they were just one issue, and they weren't even full issues, right? There was only like, like a handful of pages.
I think Monster Men is from Batman, so it's a full issue.
Oh,
But
that's a full issue. Okay.
Mad Monk certainly, and don't quote me on that. I mean, it's a very old comic, and I read it, but it's been a minute. Mad Monk though is definitely, I think it's 8 pages.
Hmm.
I can't remember the number right now, but it's the Detective Comics issue. I want to say 32. It's got the really iconic cover with Batman looming over a castle.
Oh yeah, I know
That's
what
the
you're
Mad
talking about.
Monk issue, and basically all that's kept from that in this is the look of the Mad Monk. One of the covers recreates the iconic cover, and the Mad Monk is a vampire, but everything else is a pretty big departure. But still pretty good. And I've always felt like superheroes versus classic monsters is an undermined concept in this day and age. So it used to happen a lot, but I think because it happened so much in the 50s and 60s, they don't want to do it now. But particularly like Superman versus Dracula is one I've always felt like you have a character that is the embodiment of day and goodness, and a character that is the embodiment of night and evil. And if you go with a golden age version of Superman, their power levels are much more comparable. And I just, there's a lot that I feel like could be mined there in a modern comic. This was very similar to that. This really feels like Batman versus gothic horror in both of these. And I think he fits in that like a glove. The only thing that I would change about Monster Men is he adapts very faithfully Hugo Strange's height from the Golden Age when he was a little fella. He looks more like Dr. Scratch and Sniff than he does any Hugo Strange modern readers would be familiar with. And I wish he just bumped him up a little bit, like there are some of these scenes, and not to diss our short kings in the audience, but there are some of these scenes that come across as a little silly because they are built around a short joke that takes some of the gravitas away from that villain that he would have otherwise had.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair point. So I mean, I understand all the changes they made because I think you kind of have to kind of expand on the story that's here, because like you said, the one of them's only one issue, the other one's just a handful of pages. And I thought he did a really good job. One of the things that really impressed me that I wasn't expecting to like as much as I did was the Julie Madison.
Yeah.
And it actually made me look up and maybe wonder like what else has been done with her. And I looked it up, and not a whole lot. And it was kind of surprising given like how much play she gets in this and how well that Wagner does depicting her in this. That really made me want to see more of that relationship between the two of them.
Well, she was the original Lois Lane of the strip. Like, if you go back to Golden Age Batman, Julie Madison has a huge presence that it will shock you when you go back to it, because she's there before Alfred, she's there before Robin. Like Julie Madison has this big presence that just disappears. And one of the things that is sad about this is her and her father's arc is what you lose the most, because the third part of this trilogy isn't in it. Like that, like Mad Monk ends with those two characters in a very open-ended place, whereas everything else in the comic feels very self-contained in both of them, except for what is happening with the Madisons throughout the story. And I don't think, I could be wrong, I don't think her dad is a Golden Age character. I think he's created for this. If he is a Golden Age character, he's definitely not as memorable as he is in this, which is one of my favorite parts of when you meet him in the Monster Men. He is a very sophisticated, very respected businessman.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to see over the course of this and the Mad Monk how the idea of Batman, benignly implemented by Bruce Wayne to strike fear in people's hearts for justice, is unraveling this man as sort of a what's the word I'm looking for? A casualty of his war on crime, a friendly fire. Like he is so terrified of Batman, he's just ruined by the end of Mad Monk.
Yeah. And another thing too is the beginning of the story, like the introduction of going back to Hugo Strange. I thought the introduction of Hugo Strange was very well done, because you have this training montage in shadow, and it really does a good job of making you think you're looking at Bruce Wayne. Then you find out, no, it's Hugo Strange.
Yeah. Oh, well, the art in these two is just top notch, stellar. When you see the Monster Men, which Hugo creates, this first story, for readers that haven't read it, is essentially built around a super soldier serum, right? But instead of turning you into a Captain America, it turns the people they shoot up with into these big hulking monsters, and they're so violent and brutal. And when Batman has to fight three of them, Yeah, it's tense. You're really going, oh my, how can he win? How could he even win? You
Mhm.
know?
And something else too about the art here is just some of the depictions here. I love this depiction of the Batcave in one of these pages where we see the Batmobile and all these other vehicles there. Like Wagner's design of these was really well done.
Oh yeah. The this may be my favorite Batmobile design ever in these comics, particularly in Mad Monk when they add the fin that
Mhm.
Batman makes fun of. Alfred makes fun of Batman in the first one. It's a Batmobile, but it doesn't have the big fin on it. And Alfred says something like, "I'm surprised you didn't add big bat wings or something." And you see Bruce make a face, but then when you see it again in the Mad Monk, he's added the wings that Alfred teased him about. Like I think this Batmobile is the perfect blend of outlandish enough to be a Batmobile. You don't want it to just look like a car, right? But is still doesn't feel like Batman is driving around a Decepticon.
Mhm.
Like it has that perfect balance.
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if I would say it's my favorite, but it's maybe at least in the comics, I think this might definitely be my favorite. I
Oh yeah,
in
that's what.
in other mediums, I still I still go back and forth between the animated series version and the Tim Burton one. But
Yeah,
but man, this design is very solid. I really like the way that that Wagner does it here, especially when we get to the Mad Monk and he adds in the fins, then it just like completes it because something feels like it's
yeah.
missing when we see it in um Monster Men.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I should mention, I did mean in the comics. You know what's funny? I don't even like the Tim Burton Batman movies that much. I never have been a huge fan, but that Batmobile is just perfect.
Yeah.
Like to me, that is what those movies have. Like Superman should have the John Williams score. Batman should be driving that car.
Mm.
Like, but yeah, it has a fantastic design in this series. He has such a good grasp of what Batman's world should look like, the level
Mm.
everything should be at. The gadgets are smart, they are fantastical, but they don't feel like, the Iron Man nanotech stuff that the MCU is enamored with now. They don't feel like it changes the level that Batman's playing at. Or
Mm.
I think most importantly, they don't feel like they give him a weirdly unfair advantage over the things he's fighting.
Right.
It keeps everything where you have that tension of, okay, well, I have this thing that shoots a steel cable and winds it back in. Oh, this guy can tear out of a steel cable, and there's three of him. Crap.
Yeah, another thing I like about the way he the his design of Batman here is the utility belt. I mean, I because in all and I noticed this in all these three of these stores and we see the both sides of the utility belt. Like in Faces, we see scene where Harvey is holding up the utility belt. And then in at least in the Monster Man, we get this one scene of like his cape flying up and you see behind it. And on the bat, he actually does something smart with the utility belt where he has the batarangs located like in the small of his back. Like like
Yes.
it's like collapsible there, and that's where they're stored, as opposed to like just pulling them out of some random pouch. So I thought that was a really
Yeah.
cool idea to incorporate that into the look.
Oh, I agree. I love it. This is so close to being my favorite Batman costume design. The only thing I would change is I like longer ears, and I'm a yellow oval guy.
Mm-hmm.
But my perfect Batman look in my heart, I don't know had anybody has ever rendered it. Maybe Arthur Adams, but even he had the capsule belt, and I prefer the more year one style pouch belt like you have here. This is so close though to being maybe as close as anybody has gotten to being my true platonic ideal Batman suit.
One of the things
And
that
that
I
and
never
that belt,
thought.
I
Oh,
was
sorry.
just
Go
saying
ahead.
that belt is a big part of it. Particularly how everything is so functional. I love those batarangs back there.
one of the things that I never thought I would like, but I actually really dig in retrospect, especially looking at these, seeing them together in this collection, is I actually prefer the more rounded oval belt buckle that he has in the Faces version versus the more traditional square one. That's something I never considered, but looking at it here, I'm like, oh, that actually kind of looks nice, having that little bit of contrast from the pouches.
Well, I think the yes, exactly. And it plays, I think, too, better into Wagner's strengths. Like his art is not very blocky. It has a very kind of real world rounding off. You don't. There's not a lot of hard angles, and I think that oval plays into that. One of the things that I really like that he does is like this Batman suit feels like he's wearing a suit, and that clasp plays into that. You can see exactly how that buckle functions, how he take it on and off, and likewise in the costume, you can see the seams that run along the suit at the shoulders and everything. But in the moments when Batman is scary, he uses the lighting to obscure that when he's jumping on a criminal. So you're almost seeing what they see. And then when Batman is in a quiet moment and you're from Bruce's POV, then you start to see these things like the seams and the clasps and all that stuff. It's a real master touch, the way those fade in and out of the art.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'd say this is my favorite. Someone had posted this on Reddit or something somewhere fairly recently about asking what's your preferred bat suit, and I didn't actually have an answer. So I didn't really come up with one, because I do like this, traditional black and gray with the pouch belt thing and the bat silhouette, but I also have a fondness for the yellow oval and the blue. And I really like the way Dan Moore especially draws the blue with the with the 89 bat symbol there instead, with the little extra feet there. And I haven't read any of the comics yet, but the suit in the Fraction run, at first I wasn't sold on the blue bat, but in certain lighting situations I actually kind of like the blue bat. So I don't know, I guess it depends on which store, and trunks or no trunks, I guess I'm kind of agnostic on that. I don't really have a preference for trunks or no trunks.
I care about it less with Batman than I do with Superman.
Even with Superman, I don't mind it too much. I think because I thought the Superman Reborn suit did a good job of balancing out the colors.
Yeah, it just depends on the design. There are trunkless suits that I like and trunkless suits that I don't. It just the biggest thing is just what you do with the preponderance of single color that both of these suits have. The New 52 Batman suit looked great when it had the black piping on it. But when the artist skipped the black piping and it was no trunks, then he just looked like a gray guy, so it's all about how and likewise with the New 52 Superman suit, when it had the red piping on it, it was a much better look than when the artist skipped it and it was just too much blue. So it all depends on what you do with the color balance, to me, more so than I need these men to be wearing boxer shorts or I quit. Like that's not my bag.
Well, something else too about the way that Wagner draws Batman is that he also finds a nice middle ground in terms of Batman's overall size, because I think there is the Frank Miller style where he's just like a freaking beast, and he's just like he's got like tree trunks for arms. But there's also
a fridge and a cape.
Yeah. But also there's also sometimes you go too far in the opposite direction, and he looks too skinny for the amount of strength that he's supposed to have. So I feel like this is a nice kind of balance between those two.
Yeah. You could, and I think he does a really fantastic job too of his Bruce Wayne is muscular, but he has picked the perfect size and build that if you saw that Bruce Wayne, you wouldn't go, that's Batman. But you also, you just go, oh, this is some, pretty boy with his personal trainer and Ozempic or whatever, that was able to get this body. It's really, really well done.
And because I remember people talking about the Alan Ritchson fan cast. It's like this, I think it was Dan Slott who kind of pointed this out, saying that, 8 foot tall Alan Ritchson walks into Commissioner Gordon's office, says, "So you think I might be Batman, Commissioner?" It
Speaking
reminds
of
me of
cat,
the Steel movie when they have this lineup of all these guys and they think they might be Steel, and you have Shaq towering over everybody else, and
yeah.
the guy is just looking. He's like, I don't know which one it could be.
It's a real head scratcher.
Yeah.
Speaking of casting, I don't know if you know who this actor is, but as I was reading this, and he's probably too short, but as I was reading this, I kept feeling like Matt Wagner's Bruce Wayne looks so much like Sam Witwer, like the way that he draws Bruce Wayne. I felt like he had a very similar face and a very similar build. Do you know who that is?
Yeah. I was just, I could see that. That's definitely the look. I'm not so sure about the performance, the acting ability, but the look definitely. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
But another thing too is like in this issue that he does with Tom King, this shows the nice contrast when you see like Bruce and Dick together, and I'm talking about adult Dick here, obviously. Where you can really see you can really see the contrast in the body shapes, whereas Dick is much leaner compared to Bruce. And I thought that he did a really good job of showing that difference between the two.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's the biggest reason why I tend to want Batman to be bigger. I don't really like I said earlier with Frank Miller, I don't really need a fridge and a cape, right? But I do like for Batman to be burlier because it offsets the rest of the family. If you have a more Neil Adams or Jim Aparo dimensioned Batman, I like them in a vacuum, but when you put him next to Nightwing, they kind of look like the same guy in two different outfits. I like the contrast of the bigger Batman more.
Something else too, and going back to what you had said about the trilogy and the possible third part, I mean, looking at this last page, because he swings by the billboard of the Haley Circus coming to town. So I'm really thinking that maybe you're onto something, which it would have probably been the Joker story, but also combined with Robin's
origin.
Yeah, and it would kind of like the Joker would be kind of like he'd find a way to link those two stories together. Yeah, it's too bad we never got to see that, because I think that would have been very interesting. But another thing too about this is I just like this idea of going back and revisiting these old Golden Age stories and trying to retell them in a more expanded way.
Oh yeah, and I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's really cool because they ended up doing I told the Julie Madison stuff was some of my favorite parts about these stories. And it also another thing with that too is I wonder if Wagner had wanted to do these as period pieces, given like Sadman Mystery Theater and all that, if he had, or if DC had wanted him to do it in in a more, not necessarily modern, but more timeless setting, I guess I'd say, because the cars and stuff definitely don't look like 1930s style cars.
Well, Matt Wagner has been very outspoken in interviews that he feels like all comic book characters should stay in the era in which they were created. He thinks that they work better in those eras. So there's a good chance of that. But I also think that I think in Matt Wagner's head, all of these are in continuity with Batman Year One. And I think that's a very intentional step that he takes, both in the design, but then also in the characterization of Batman, the way that he speaks in those scrawled diary pages. I think that's probably the biggest reason it's not Golden Age, if I had to guess, was that he wants to make sure that if you read Batman Year One, you can go right into his work and feel like you're getting a similar depiction of the character.
Yeah, I was definitely picking up some Year One vibes, and obviously, Falcone is in these, and he came from Year One, so that definitely makes sense. But I think it would have been interesting to see, and maybe not necessarily this one, maybe not necessarily Wagner, but someone doing some more stories, period stories with these old, like one of my favorite comics of the past, several years is Superman Smashes the Klan, which was set in the time period.
Right.
So I think
and is itself adaptation of the radio show.
Right, stories. Exactly. Yeah. So I think it would be cool to do some more of these adaptations and set them in the time period. I wouldn't go as far as Wagner does to say that all heroes should stay in the era, absolutely, but I think there is definitely an argument made to have more stories set in those original eras.
Yeah. Well, I should mention because it's plugging a book I really like right now, but Jeff Lemire is currently doing this same thing with JSA. I don't know if you're reading it, but the current
year one or
yes, that is a direct adaptation of the first All-Star Comics issue that the JSA appeared in, with them going around the country fighting secret Nazi cells. It's the exact same plot line, same setup. It's just like this, where he's taken the plot of a Golden Age story, but expanding it out into a 6-issue arc. And it's been great.
I'm very curious I haven't read it yet, but I saw that somewhere, and I'm very curious because I love Jeff Lemire, his Green Arrow work, his Old Man Logan series. So I'll definitely have to check that out once it comes out in trade. It's still being published right now, right?
Yeah, it's not finished.
Okay, yeah. So when that comes out in trade, maybe in like 5 years time or however when DC decides to do that, I'll definitely make sure to check that out. Anyway, so before we close up here, is there anything else you wanted to mention about this collection?
I do want to go negative for a second. My least favorite thing about it, and it really, on my Matt Wagner rampage, I had a great time. I felt like he was. I got the feeling that he is one of the last like comic auteurs, right? Who he does the writing and the art, and he has a vision, and that's been really good. Having said that, he does have some tropes, particularly around sex and sexual violence, that pops up in all of his works too much gratuitously. You see some of it in Trinity. You see a little bit of it here with the way that Julie is kidnapped and tortured and put through the ringer by the vampire. And then in Sandman Mystery Theater, it's every story has some kind of really dark and perverse sexual violence undertone that I wish he did not feel the need to include. And I do want to put that out there for the readers before they get into his work. You're going to find a lot of stuff you can like. I'm not at all saying that you shouldn't read it because of this stuff, but I don't want you to go into reading it without knowing that those undertones are a big part of these stories and all of his stories. I think that's an important disclaimer to put out before anybody.
No, that's a fair point. Yeah, I haven't read as much Wagner stuff as you have, especially not in such a compressed amount of time. So, that didn't stand out to me as much, but I could definitely see that. And I think that's kind of a piece of the era that Wagner's coming out of, because oh boy, I mean, one thing you could say about Alan Moore is, well, two things you could say about Alan Moore is, dude loves the public domain stuff and dude loves his rape scenes.
Yes. And I think you can see in Wagner's work that Frank Miller and Alan Moore are heroes of his. Yeah. And they have that in common. Dude loves his public domain stuff and dude loves his rape scenes. Yeah. But I definitely, I will say, if you haven't read Trinity and you're looking for another Bibliophiles episode, let me know when you want to do Matt Wagner's Trinity, because that is an incredible story. But right in the middle of it is a subplot with Wonder Woman that some people find absolutely inexcusable. But again, it is in an incredible story, and that's one that would generate conversation, I think, quite a bit.
Okay, yeah, definitely things to keep an eye out for. And yeah, we'll definitely keep that in mind for the future. But before we finish up here, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Again, you can find us at Singlebound Podcast on Spotify. That is where we will be back to when we get done putting this baby together. We just got to find the instructions. And if
there aren't any, by the way, you're screwed.
Oh no. And I don't even have a screwdriver. But if you want to suggest issues for us to review for the show, you can do so at singleboundpod@gmail.com, and we would love to have them.
Okay, great. Well, as for us, superherocinephiles.com is the website, superherocinephiles.com on Blue Sky, also Super Cinema Pod. on a lot of the other places, Superhero Cinephiles on Facebook. That does it for this episode. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. Superhero Cinephiles is produced by me, Percival Constantine. The show is created by myself and the late, great Derek Ferguson, our host emeritus. Visit us on the web at superherocinephiles.com to listen to past episodes or find out how you can be a guest yourself. Support the show by visiting our advertiser links or click the Buy Me a Coffee link on the website to make a one-time donation. We are Super Cinema Pod on both Instagram and Blue Sky, so please be sure to follow us. We'd also appreciate if you could rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and share us with your friends.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.